I'll feed anybody, but I'm not for everybody. My name is Chef Derek Green, and I find people that have turned their life's experiences into ingredients they use to feed others. We're redefining soul food. These people have turned their adversities into their advantages. This is the Sauce of Life show, and let's go. John Grillo, welcome to the Sauce of Life, brother. This show is about people that have taken their life's experiences and turned those into ingredients that they now use to feed others. With that being said, John, introduce yourself to the world.
Yeah, well, I love that because you being a cook and then blending your ingredients with life. That's great. So,
yep, you got it.
My name is John Grillo, and I know I don't look it, but I'm a senior citizen by 2 years. I just turned 67 a couple of months ago, and I'm doing my best to stay as young as possible. And part of that is one of my claims to fame is that, at 55 years old, I bench pressed 500 pounds. And at yesterday, I bench pressed 405. And I would love to get back to 500 before I die one more time. So we've worked on that. It's been an up and down process. But my background is, I was born in Brooklyn and Queens and New York City. I grew up in New York City. I now live right outside New York City, Long Island, a place called Mineola. That's 5 miles over the New York City line. I dropped out of college and I went to the military. I know Derek and I share a military background. I went to the Air Force. I spent 4 years in the Air Force. I came back. I worked in Wall Street and computers for like 30 years until one day. In fact, just last week, it's a great date. Check out this date, 10/11/12, October 11th, 2012, 10/11/12, I was told, okay, you no longer work at JP Morgan after 28 years. And I got, walked out the door, collected my stuff and left. And it's been a 12-year journey since then of figuring out this part of my life. And it's led me to many great things, greater things than had I stayed in the corporate world, I'm sure. There are still things that are not quite aligned for me, like since I left the corporate world, but for the most part, there were things that I wanted to do for decades, such as go to Machu Picchu and go to the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona, and things like that I just never had time to do because I was in computers in Wall Street. I was like, just had a chain on me, and it was like, how to work weekends. Can I take vacation now? Oh no, you can't because of this project. That kind of thing. But in these 12 years, I've done many of the things I've wanted to do for that time, and it's. I come from it's funny. My father worked like 3 jobs, right? And he died at age 42, 55 years ago. So I lost my dad when I was very, very young. And I lost my mom when I was 27, which my son just turned 28. And if he was to lose his mom now, and my wife did have cancer, and she survived, thank God. I'm very grateful for that. But if he was to lose his mom, and my wife got cancer when my son was about 21. And that was one of my biggest fears. I don't want my son to lose his mom, right, at this age. So when I lost my mom at 27, I felt like an old guy because I lost my father at 12. But I realized how young 27 is to lose your mom, And and in what's today's date? Today's date is the 17th. So in 10 days, on the 27th of October, my mom will be gone for 40 years. Okay, so that's a big milestone. So, so like I said, I worked in the Air Force. I worked in electronics. I worked in a big C5 Galaxy. I did all kinds of networking and all kinds of computer engineering, for 28 years at JP Morgan. Now, all the people work from home now because of COVID. I was like one of the I didn't invent it, but when working from home was new, I was in charge of a group that set that all up at JP Morgan. And, I got a lot of accolades for that. But then as time changes and management changes and this thing happens, then you're not good anymore, right? That's why. So now I'm a life coach, okay? I'm a life coach for men, although I've coached many women, but I'm a life coach for men, midlife men who have seemed to have given up, have seemed to have lost their mojo. Again, at 55, I bench press 500 pounds. I'm doing my best to stay young. I've had a year of injury. I've had severe nerve pain last year, and I'm just coming back from that. I gained a lot of weight that I worked very hard to keep off my body. But this year of injury, now I get to have another comeback. Derek and I work with a great coach named Tim Storey, and his thing is, you have a setback, you have a comeback, right? He's known as the comeback coach, and I get to have another comeback. And I'm grateful that I still get to have another comeback, even though I'm kind of angry at myself. Not that I got hurt, but that I lost the discipline. And I still could have been more disciplined, even though I was hurt. And I wound up gaining a lot of weight that I want to get off me. So I'm a men's coach, and my tagline as a men's coach is mind, money, muscles, and miracles. Okay, I've witnessed a lot of miracles. I'm grateful for the miracles I've witnessed. I'm a mindset coach for the most part. That's my main thing. I've certified under a gentleman named David Bear, who's relatively well known in circles, but not well known. That's the thing with coaches. Even Tim Storey, as famous as he is, a lot of people don't know who Tim Storey is, right? Right. I think the only coach everybody knows is Tony Robbins. That's the one everybody knows, right? So I with the mindset, and I did work with a company called WFG, World Financial Group. And I had a life insurance license, and so I have some, and I know people. I can give people some financial help, and the fitness. In fact, I'm going for my my fitness certification now. Finally, I want to get some credentials in that, but I know a lot about fitness and weight loss, so I'm going for some for the National Academy of Sports Medicine. I'm NASM. I'm doing that right now. That certification. But so I help people fitness wise, and that's about it. I dropped out of college. I wound up with a master's degree at Columbia, going to school 24 years at night. I feel I've witnessed a lot of miracles. I've faced a lot of losing my father at a young age, losing my mother at a young age. My sister just passed away in January. My grandfather got murdered. So I've had a lot of trauma, things like that I understand when people have trauma, and I'm still working on getting over my trauma. It's a never-ending thing. So that's about it for now. I have a son that's 28. I'm married for 35 years, and that's kind of me in a big nutshell.
And you said a lot there, brother, and there's a lot to unpack here. So thank you for sharing all of that. One of the things that struck me most about you, John, when we finally met in person in Newport Beach, was your resiliency. Given the traumas that you've faced, if I can recall them, your granddad was murdered.
Right.
You lost your dad at a very young age. You lost your mom at 27. Your wife had cancer. You've had these very traumatic experiences, and yet you still showed up in that group, smiling, happy, shaking hands. And I'm always, because you and I are aligned in that we've had so many traumas.
Right. I know you have too. I know.
Early life. But this show is literally about you. What was it, if you can name it, that allowed you to be so resilient, to be that person that stands up after you lost your father, which was the first trauma, correct?
Yeah. So I think there's a few different things. I think I was blessed, with a good mind and a strong mind, and a natural inclination to have a lot of persistence, right, and resiliency, like you said. So I think those inner qualities that I was kind of born with helped me through it. I also, it's kind of funny because when my dad died, it was 19 days for my 12th birthday. When you're 11, 12 years old, you're invincible, right? Nothing can touch you. You don't care. So I was just cursing out, and I believe in God and I believe in Jesus, and I'm not a God, Jesus freak or Bible freak. I'm not going to preach to you and say you repent to go to hell and all that stuff. But I believe in God myself, and I cursed out God. I was like, "F you, God. F you. You suck. You made my dad died. I hate you. F you. F you. F you." Right? God couldn't touch me because I was 12 years old. Right? But then that said a whole series of gifts he gave me, that I didn't even realize that went in progress. And one of them was when I So my dad took me to a lot of baseball games, and I think you heard part of this story, Derek. In
The audience guys.
Yeah. But my dad took me to a lot of baseball games, and the short story is he died in May 17th, 1969, and he didn't take me to any baseball games. So finally in September, my mom had my uncle take me to a baseball game. And if you recall, if you're a baseball fan, or if you're not a baseball fan, even if you're not, you may have heard of the 1969 Miracle Mets. They won the World Series, and they were known as like lovable losers. They were always in last place. They went from almost last place to first place, and they beat the Baltimore Orioles in the World Series when Baltimore Orioles were heavily favored. And you want to know something, Derek? The anniversary, the 55th anniversry of that World Series win for the Mets winning in 1969 was yesterday. Yesterday was the 55th anniversary. Okay, so in fact, 55 years my dad's dead. 55 years of the 1969 World Series anniversary. So I've been to hundreds of baseball games. I've been to almost every stadium in the major leagues. I have 4 left to see. You go to games, you just forget them. This game, when I was a kid, was unforgettable. And it was unforgettable because the Mets lost. You say, what? The Mets lost? Yes, because the Mets lost. Because they lost in such a way that was unforgettable. Because the pitcher who pitched against the Mets, and the team was the Pittsburgh Pirates, pitched a no-hitter against the Mets. So 4 days before the Mets was going to clinch being in first place and start their playoff run and go to the World Series, on 9/20/1969, I went to this baseball game, and I saw the Mets got no-hitted, and so many other things happened. I won't go into it now. It's a lot of detail. I wrote a whole big almost story that I'll hopefully put in a book one day about it, but I have that story written. And so many things happened to make it unforgettable besides the no-hitter. And years went by. I had my son. And then a couple of years after I had my son, or a few years after I had my son, I started thinking about it. It didn't dawn on me for a while. But that game was 9/20/1969, the date of that game. I had to look it up to be sure. And my son was born on 9/20/1996, So, and if I would have had like 17 kids or 10 kids, okay, one of them could have been born on that day. It could have been a coincidence, But I had one kid. I have one kid, one child, one boy. He's 28. In fact, we're going to see the Mets in the playoffs tonight, right? We're going to the game tonight. And and me and Jason, my son Jason, we're 4-0 when we see the Mets in the playoffs, and they have to win tonight, or else they're probably going to lose the series. But God gave me this gift in May of 1969 that I wouldn't even realize that 27 years later. My son was born 27 years later, and I wouldn't even realize till a few years after that. So to me, and I've had other gifts from God I saw, and I think that's what's helped me get through everything. My faith. That's for sure. I could have just said my faith, but that would have been boring, right? I said, my faith.
Thing, brother, and I see that you're a person that always. I notice how you tell stories when I listen to you talk with other guys, and you associate it with events,
right?
And you're one of the few people that I've found that attaches traumas or even happy memories to specific things, which is amazing because as I started working with Dr. Joe Dispenza, I began understanding that to access the subconscious mind, you have to go through the emotional trapdoor, basically, that separates the conscious and subconscious. Right. This is how you cement those memories. So for me, I have things like when Kanye West released his debut album, that's the time when my sister was murdered. But wow. You've associated this with the World Series, and then with all these various things that you have in your life, you've associated with certain dates, and you pull that out. Did you always have a fascination with special events like that?
Oh, yeah.
Date-wise, like,
as a matter of fact, yeah. And here's the thing, too, because and then when I was 20 years old, it was August or July 1977. It's because it's the one date I don't know. I don't know this date. It drives me crazy because I had a very spiritual experience where, I don't know, I was just standing there. My friends were playing the guitar. I was looking up at the sky, and I just got hit with something like, I can't even put it into words. But it made me realize that there's something out there, unless I was psychotic. There was something out there. I felt God. I felt Jesus. And even though that happened to me, this bam, 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 really physical experience I had, which was only like a second long. It wasn't like, and it was still like when I was 20, so that's 47 years ago, and I still swear by it today. And I do give that, hey, maybe I was crazy, okay, but I don't know that date that happened. I don't know the date of that. And I wrote a story about that. I said I would give a lot to know that date. I would give a lot. So yes, I've always worked somehow. The dates and the numbers of the dates have always been germane to me, and I've always tried to, keep them close and the meaning they have to me.
Beautiful, man. I hear you struggling with something, or maybe struggling isn't the right word, but in years past, I know that I have struggled with saying God or giving God credit for things. Right. I would say the universe, the creator, the
yeah, right. You don't want to be, you want to be agnostic to all the other people, right? I get it. Yeah.
Right. And so I had an experience on January 18th of 2023.
Oh, cool.
Very clearly. And then January 19th is when I said I heard the voice of God. And from that day, I give God his credit. Right. Like, I heard it very clearly. So when you're sitting here, man, I meet people where they are. There's no need for you to not say God or not talk about what it is.
And I still say the universe a lot too, but I get that, and I think it's all part of one thing, like infinite intelligence. And I've been reading Dr. Joseph Murphy, The Power of Subconscious Mind. I'm in the middle of that book, and he gives a lot of credit to praying, being our own subconscious mind. I don't know where he is exactly, where he felt about God. I don't know if he just believed it's all in our mind, but again, infinite intelligence, like the whole universe is built on infinite intelligence, right? That had to be created and designed to how everything is part of everything, I mean, it just couldn't have been accidental. Excuse me. So, I thank you for saying that, because I've always been reticent to say, and you go to events, God, the universe, pick whatever one you want, because, and a lot of people don't believe in God. So that's why you just respect them. But
I respect people, brother, but it's and in that vein, what I've come to understand is, you know what? You can call it infinite intelligence. You can call it sacred geometry. You can call it the quantum field, or whatever you want to call it, or you can call it God, whatever you want to call it. I get it. If you're talking science or you're talking in the world of theology, there is an entity. We all understand that there's an energy that exists at a higher level, a higher plane than we are. And when I say God, that's what I'm referring to. Is that
because it's evident to me that there's more going on this earth than we know.
Yes.
It's evident now. That experience made it evident. And here's the thing. I'm 67. That happened to me when I was 20. And as tangible as that experience was, as real as it was, as like no doubt about it, there's a God to me. I still, through the 47 years of trials and tribulations, my faith is still waning at times. It still wanes, even knowing that. So I think about the people who may never have had that kind of extra sensual, extra extraordinary, extra, spiritual experience, supernatural experience. And what do they think? How do they keep their faith? Right? It's a hard question.
You mentioned about thoughts, though. You talked about thoughts a little bit, and so many books that I've read seem to say the same thing. They seem to all conclude that we're the sum total of our thoughts. And any experience that we have in life is processed through our brain, our thoughts. A person can receive $1 million. One person can say it's a gift, and another person will think that it's a curse. Either way, it's because of what they think. So when you're praying and meditating, that's existing in your head and in your mind.
And that's about that's a lot about what my mindset coaching's about. Thoughts are things, your beliefs are things, right? And you could change your beliefs, then you get to change your thoughts to a positive way, how to shift. And here's the thing too, a lot of our, what we call, negative beliefs or limiting beliefs, right? The ironic thing about them is a lot of them happen between the ages of when we were born and like 7, 8 years old, right? Maybe our parents were a little kind of dismissing of us, so we felt not worthy, and maybe kids were someone, we felt this, we felt that. And a lot of the things that make us have limiting beliefs today are things we don't even remember in our lives. We don't even remember them. They occurred in our lives. Some of them we might remember, but we don't even remember them. And they're the things causing us to think we're not good enough, get into overwhelm, get into suffering, and all those things. So I find that, and that's one of the things I work with people on, is just how to get to a place where you suffer less and your limiting beliefs, take less control of you. That you're in the driver's seat, not your limiting beliefs. Because a lot of times your limiting beliefs will take over and say, move over, and they'll drive the car all the way down the road and have you in suffering, right?
Right. Well, a lot of people aren't conscious of the limiting beliefs. And I believe that's something that people like you and I, you with your coaching style, you're good at showing people, essentially becoming a mirror in a way to say you have these limiting beliefs. And I'll also say this, man, success leaves clues. And for a person that's listening to this interview with as many traumas and traumatic experiences that you've already named, if they're paying attention, they'll see how your paradigm automatically shifts back into positivity.
Right.
Like you can talk about your dad, but you shift right back into positivity. Not just that, it's also that your positive mindset is about helping other people. Right. You're about giving back and growth. Do you know what came from you?
I will say, I've done a lot of work, since I lost the job and I got into coaching, because when I lost my job, I got very depressed. I felt very worthless, right? And I got almost 300 pounds, I was going to the gym 3 times a week to like 0 times a week, right? To like I'm making, way above 6 figures to 0. And, and I was told, you're not good enough. We don't want you here after being like, not a star, but kind of a star in the place, right? Yeah. And it had a big thing on how I felt. And through all this, and yet I had all the resilience I had from my dad passing and knowing my worth and knowing my smartness and, accomplishing what I accomplished. But I still had this, losing a job can be and was another traumatic experience, right? I had a family to take care of, right? And not only that, the fun thing was, in fact, it's just in another few days too. I think it's the 29th of October. And I just told you, my mother died in October. I got fired in October. And I was going to say Hurricane Sandy was in October, right? When we had Hurricane Sandy in the Northeast. But yet October's still my favorite month. I love October for many different reasons. But all these bad things happen to me in life, but I still love October. But the thing is, 17 days after I lost the job, I think the 12th to the 29th we had Hurricane Sandy. And we had no power for 2 weeks, so here I am. I'm going to get a new job. I got to figure this out, blah, blah, blah. No power for 2 weeks. Hurricane Sandy, some damage to my house. So, it just made me feel like worthless, and I had a family to take care of, and everything was asunder, but it led me on this journey. It led me on a journey when I'm talking to you, led me on a journey being, Tim Storey, being friends with Tim Storey, and him telling me the other night at the meeting, I'm going to be in New York soon. We'll get together. The man of that stature wants to get together with me. And I appreciate that and love every minute of that. So like I said, a lot of it has to do with the work I've done the last few years as well to get better at what you're saying. Still being happy, still letting the limiting beliefs like come off me, being willing to help people. I was always willing to help people. I was in fact, one of the things I did become so funny when I was in the Air Force. I was on we were lined up in some kind of a thing. I forget what was happening, some kind of promotion thing, and we were at attention somewhere. And I said to myself, because I lost my dad when I was 12, I said, I want to become a big brother one day, right? And then, I got out of the Air Force, life happened. My mom passed away. I go to school at night for many years. I went to school at night. I wound up getting a master's degree from Columbia, got a bachelor's degree from CUNY, just going to school for like many years at night, before, during, and after the Air Force. And I got married. I had a kid. I bought a house, but then when I lost the job, now I'm 55 and I'm becoming like what's an entrepreneur. So I'm not going to a 9-to-5 job anymore. So now it's time to become a big brother. And I became a big brother to a kid. I'm going to tell you something. The big brother's going to flip you out in a second too. I became a big brother to a kid who he's now, 2001. He's now 23. I was his big brother for 6 years. We still talked. I think we'll hopefully be friends for life. And so I became a big brother, and that was something I did. But here's the thing. I just told you the quick story about my son and 9/20, 96, 9/20, 69 with the game and my son's birthday. So when I became a big brother, it was kind of weird because I said, all right, I applied to become a big brother, and they didn't call me for like a year. And all you hear is like, oh, we need more. We need bigs for all the littles we have. I'm like, what is this with these people? Then I get a call. Oh, we're sorry. Things are messed up around here. We understand if you don't want to be a big brother anymore, blah, blah. No, why are you trying to push me out? I said, yeah, I'll become a big brother. So finally, a few weeks later, I meet the mom and the kid. His name is Avery. And we sit down. So you know what date his birthday is?
What's that?
It's 9/20. It's 9/20. He was born 9/20/2001. He was born 9 days after 9/11.
Wow.
So I mean, if you just wanted a cherry on top of all the belief and how everything's aligned for me, that's why I put my faith in God and everything I'm doing now. Like to say, okay, I may not be where I want to be right now. Like as far as like. Again, I'm not to be greedy, but making like millions, not millions of dollars, but making like, a lot of money. And I'm still building my business and I'm still doing this. I'm still doing that. But I have faith that God's going to show me the way because somehow he gives me these weird little messages. I mean, that kid could have been born any day of the week, right? Any date of the year. He was born 9/20. I mean, come on.
Man. The way these things happen, bro. You just said something there that I want to double back on, man. You're saying that. Well, first, let me just say this. Let me give you your flowers in this respect.
Okay.
It takes a hell of a man or a hell of a coach to be able to stand and admit that, you know what, I don't get it right all the time. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I battle depression or I battle feelings of worthiness or unworthiness or all of these things. So for you to come on and say that I have another level of respect for you as a coach, as a life coach. Because you're not presenting yourself as Jesus or something like this. But something that you just said there that I wanted to double back around to was that you're not where you want to be yet. I also am not where I want to be yet, but I had something happen just a couple nights ago, John. I was invited to DC, and by the end of this trip, I was blessed to be literally sitting 3 seats away from Oprah Winfrey.
Oh, really?
And Oprah was receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award. And something that was amazing to me, first of all, it blew my mind as a kid that grew up in Fort Pierce, Florida, being told that I wasn't anything and wasn't never going to amount to anything or just going to end up like my daddy and end up in jail or something like this. To be sitting that close to someone of that stature as Oprah and other people around her, like Wintley Phelps and other people like this. But then she got up on stage and I realized that at 70 years old, Oprah's still not where she wants to be.
She's, I mean, it's crazy.
She's talking. Here she is, and multi-billionaire now, and able to help so many people in giving back around the world with all these various charitable organizations that she's founded, and she's still not where she wants to be. Do you think there's a time, brother? Tell me this, because you deal with that aging population. I'm about to.
Yeah, you're a little younger.
Is there a time?
It's weird. Like, what else could Oprah want other than, like, you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? The highest level, self-actualization, right? She's got all her safety needs. She's got all the other needs, right? She got all the physical needs. So maybe she just wants to self-actualize more, right? Maybe she just wants to. Which means, like, even learning deeper in ourselves, and some of the stuff I touched on is a mystery of life, right? Whether it's God, God and the universe. I just did a post the other day, and I always thought about this even as a little kid. When we think about space, when we think about infinity, and when we think about, like, I'm in a room now that's not very big. It's got a wall. It's got a wall. My house got a wall and a ceiling, and it begins and ends, right? The street begins and ends. Everything we know begins and ends. But space, we don't know where it begins and ends. And theoretically, it never ends. How does something never end in a physical space, right? How can you even conceive that, right? So with all the stuff that we don't know, and Oprah's deep. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to Oprah, but, Oprah and Tim Storey are pretty good friends, right? Could have name dropped Tim, right? But, I'm sure she just wants to look deeper inside and deeper outside, and then maybe that's where it comes from. I mean, that's one supposition. I don't know.
No, I believe that. I believe that it's an internal struggle, brother. I had this revelation that it's crazy, man. There can never be two things that are exactly alike, ever. because even if you have two items born at the same time, one was created in this space and one was created in this space.
Right.
Even though they were created at the exact same time. So you can never actually have two things that are exactly the same. And with that, that means John Grillo is unique. That means every single human being I've ever had a conversation with is unique.
Without a doubt.
Now, we may have similar experiences or things that we've endured, but as a holistic being, we are unique. And this is why I want to have you on here, man, because as a person who's navigating life in the way that you are, some of the grand things that you're doing, like you've been to almost every baseball stadium in the United States.
Yeah, I got 4 left.
4 left. What 4 do you have left?
Minnesota, Kansas City, like Dallas, Texas, the Texans, right? And now this one, I don't know if it's what's going to happen. The Tampa Bay Rays, but I don't know if their roof just got destroyed by the hurricane. So they don't know if they're going to, because they want to move into a new stadium and the roof's going to cost like $10 million to fix. So they don't know if they're going to fix it and play somewhere else till they get the new stadium. So I never have a chance to go there. We'll see what happens. But I can still go to Tampa with the new stadium. What happens? But yeah, those 4.
But you're a man that executes. You're a person that, in spite of, you still execute. And you've set your dreams. First of all, you understand what it is that you wanted within that specific realm, and then you executed against it. And I appreciate that. What drives that execution?
I let a lot of the way it got executed a lot was letting it happen, was letting life take its path. And then when life took its path, like when I went to Newport with you and the California Angels were home, and California, the Angel Stadium was one I hadn't been to. And I just said, I'm going to go to the Angel game right now, right? And when I went to Scottsdale, Arizona, and I've since been to Scottsdale, Arizona like 3 or 4 times, but for the first time in my life, I went to Scottsdale, Arizona to a mindset seminar. And I wanted to go to the OK Corral for many, many years, right? Wyatt Earp, I'm into history, Civil War history, Western history, things like that. And I was 2.5 hours away, 3 hours away from Tombstone, Arizona. And I said, now's the time, take an extra day and go, So part of it was, what am I doing? And what else is happening in my life that I can make what I want to happen, like something I want to do happen as well. And some of it was like, all right, my son was like, all right, where do we go? Let's go to Denver. And me and Jason went to Denver in August, to see we went to the Rocky Stadium and saw the Mets play 3 games there. So some of it's deliberate. Let's plan a trip. But a lot of it's been letting my life unfold and then making the rest happen. Like I joined David Bear's Legendary Mindset high-level coaching program. And one of his trips was like Machu Picchu. And I wanted to go to Machu Picchu like for decades. All right, I'm going. And then in 2019, I went to Machu Picchu and a lot of other parts of Peru. So things like that, let it unfold, and some deliberateness. And even when it's unfolding, there's some deliberateness in the unfolding. That's how I wound up in all those places.
Man, for those people based in religion or spirituality, that's the equivalent. It sounds like a let go and let God.
Right.
But it also, you just said something there that I literally wrote it down. Take an extra day and go. Because there are so many people that don't realize that they're so close to their dreams. They're so close to that thing that they've desired to have, but they don't take an extra day and go. They're rigid. They're forced to be rigid.
Yeah. And here's the other thing I'll say to that too. And I told somebody this the other day. I'm trying to remember who, but it doesn't really matter who. When it's come to like some of the things that I want to do and money, knowing like my dad died at 42, knowing my dad was also, I said this to Tim on the Tuesday calls, you weren't there, sorry, but my dad was, he was in World War II and his ship was torpedoed and he had to survive in the water for a long time. And I said, like, he did that so we, meaning me, my brothers, my sisters, could be born. He did that so we could be born, and then he had to go. He got a call to God, and he died at 42. And so when it comes to money, like tonight, we're going to a Met game, the playoff game. And it's ridiculous. It cost me $600 a ticket. It's $1,200 for me and my son to go to a game. And like, I'm not rich enough, but I have $1,200. Like, I'm not going to worry about that $1,200 in 6 months or 1 year from now. Yeah, today I'm like, oh man, I don't want to spend $1,200 on a game. So when it's been a choice to do something and spend a little bit of money, I'm not saying everybody's going to spend $600 on a Met game, but some people don't even want to take $10 out of their pocket sometimes to do something, right? Spend the money and have the experience. And I've always made that choice because my father didn't have those experiences. You know, he didn't have the ability, he didn't have the chance to have these experiences. And now me, 25 years later, 25 years more life that he's had so far that he passed away, I'm still looking to have the experiences. Not going to worry to the degree. I mean, not to be totally, I got to be sensible about it, as well, right? I'm not going to go to hawk my house for some experience, but spend a few dollars to have the experience.
Beautiful, man. When your dad passed away at 12, were you forced, or did you step into that role as like head of household?
Oh yeah, because it's a good question too, because I'm the oldest. It was, I had me, and I have twin sisters, and I said one of my sisters passed away in January. Excuse me, after like a 3-year battle with pancreatic cancer, right? So, and I had a brother. My brother was almost 3 years old when my dad died. He barely remembers. He remembers a little bit, but he barely remembers my dad. So I was the oldest at 12. And I remember my uncle telling me, "Now, you got to help your mom. You got to do this. You got to do that." And yeah, I felt a huge piece of responsibility on myself for that. From the time, from a young age. And the thing was too, like even just so my mom, this flipped me out too, because I remember when I turned 33, I really thought of this. My mom was a 33-year-old widow with 4 kids. 12, 10, and 3, right? And so if my mom wanted to go to the girlfriend's house and play mahjong or play cards, I would mind my brother. I would mind, she trusted me. I was old enough and responsible enough. Although today, if you left a 12-year-old kid to mind a 3-year-old, you'd be arrested, right? But back then it was common, right? And I would mind my brother and, kind of watch over my sisters and let my mom go play mahjong for a little while down the block or something, right? So, yeah, I had a big level of feeling that responsibility. And it was kind of a burden, too. It was kind of a burden as well. But it was what it was. It was, that's what it was.
Do you think that contributed to shaping how you are today? Or anything that happens in your life today that you relate to?
Because I've always felt, and I took a transformational leadership course, right? But if it's to be, it's up to me. You know what I mean? So I take all this responsibility for everything, and sometimes it's too much of a burden, right? To feel responsible for making everything happen. So what I've done recently, I've let go. I've let go of some of that responsibility. I've let go of even some of the relationships with people, that. Just to not be selfish, but to just let go a little bit. I'm still responsible for my household, for my wife, for my son, all that. But it did a lot to shape me. I remember at work, at work, there were so many guys who wanted to cut corners. And I work with a lot of guys, you could appreciate this. I work with a lot of guys who were not in the military. And the guys and the people, when you're in the military, you have a different level of responsibility, right? A different level of accountability. And I work with a lot of guys who were just go off the street and sloughing off. I said, guys, especially when I got to where I was in a managerial supervisory position over them. So guys, we really got to test this multiple times to make sure it works, really works, not just once. They didn't care about anything, right? A lot of them, not all of them. And so it shaped me to have that extra mode of, everybody else went home a lot and I stayed at work making sure everything was right. And that was both a good thing and a mistake when I did that, doing that in the corporation, but but so it did shape me 100%.
Can you go into that a little bit? Because there's a lot of people today that are in that same position that you were in back then, where they're spending extra time working, especially in the entrepreneurial world, man, where we feel like we need to grind our fingers to the bone, but we're neglecting other things on the other side. So
I always tried to have a good time on the other side, but I always, but my job was, I may be wrong. This may be, but I didn't feel like, I felt I had a responsibility at work. Like I had things to oversee that had to be right. And I built things, and I engineered things, and I had to make sure they worked. And I felt that extra effort I put in was what was required to make it work. It wasn't like I was a workaholic. I wanted to be there, or it was just like, yeah, I don't want to go home. It was like, I felt like there was no escape. I had to be there. I had to do what I did. Sometimes I had help. Sometimes I had other people working with me, or we had like a vendor, the vendor who had the technology assisting me. But a lot of times it was alone, or, it just depended on what it was. But I remember my son, when he was like, I forget how old he was, but he was very, very young. He wrote something, I feel sorry for my dad. He has to work all the time. Something like that, and yet I did what I could. All right, Jason, I'm taking a day off we'll hang out, on a day. Like if he had off of school for something, I took off. And we, maybe do this, do that, do the other things. Sometimes when I took off to hang out with him, I would be so exhausted and I wanted to take a nap, and I'd like fall asleep for a little while. And he would get so pissed at me. He would get so mad at me because a little while. And then I'd wake up, but he wanted to do it now. Like, he's a little kid. He didn't have no patience. He would get so mad at me. And I didn't blame him, but I just exhaustion, right? That's what, I didn't fall asleep because I wanted to fall, because I didn't want to stay awake either. I just had to fall asleep. So, a lot of jobs are unreasonable, and they might require that, but a lot of jobs are more reasonable today, I think, with all the things that have happened in the last few years with COVID and this and that and the other thing. But I think you have to find, I won't call it balance. Another famous coach I've worked under, and I think I talked to you about him, Derek, Tim Grover, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's like, and I know him personally too. I haven't seen him in a long time. I've met him, talked to him, and he said everybody wants balance, but he's also asking for what? Because when you think about it, what is balance? When you have balance, you think about a scale, right? And, with a scale of justice, whatever, and you got a scale. Balance is zero on the scale.
Right.
It's zero. So who wants zero? Nobody wants zero. People want something tangible, more than zero. So he looked at balance like that. I said, that's because everybody said, I want work-life balance. I want work-life balance. I want work-life balance. And of course we do. We want to enjoy our life and not let work take over our life. That's what that means. But when you think about balance, when Tim puts in the context of being a zero on the scale, then how much is balance worth if it's zero? You know what I mean? You want more than balance. You want the scale to tip towards you. You just don't want balance, So that blew my mind when Tim brought that up a lot. So sometimes don't always think balance. Think like, hey, I want that scale tipping towards me somehow.
That's actually, that's thoughtful.
It blew my mind. It took me a while to get that.
Okay. No, it makes sense because you're trying to achieve balance. You're trying to achieve homeostasis.
Right.
Equal, but yeah, you're right, man.
Tim Grover's right.
No, you know what? I wanted to tell you something, man, because I've talked with you a few times, and this is actually something that mentors have poured into me about this understanding that John Grillo, in and of his own self, in your own right, you're your own man that can stand up without necessarily the comparisons to a Tim Grover or a David Bauer or a Metzger or a Tim Storey. It's like you have enough in your life, man, that you're talking about here. Even things like right now, here's something that you can help people with. Please, my audience, you just mentioned, you've talked about letting go.
Right.
What does that mean to you, and how did you do it? So many people talk about what to do, like letting go, but they don't say how to do it.
Well, I think a lot of it comes from understanding your power. A lot of people don't understand their power. A lot of people think they're powerless. A lot of people think that, and a lot of people, I want to use the right word, but I also want to be facetious. A lot of people kind of enjoy being powerless because in a weird, perverse sense, because when they enjoy being powerless, it means they can give every rationalization for having lack of control over their own life. You know what I mean? Like they can say, well, I have to do this, and I can't help I can't help it. And they're many of them are fine to be driven by somebody else, by external forces, because it's just a rationalization for them to stop, look within themselves, and say, wait, what's going on inside here? It's like escapism. It's almost like doing a drug, right? Yes. So I think the first step is understanding your power. That and understanding like who you are and what power do I have. And I am going to reach deep down inside myself and respect my own power, and then know when to say no, and know what I want to do, and understand what I want to do, not what the world wants me to do, not what the boss wants me to do. Of course, you got to please the boss to some degree, like I'm not saying being an anarchist or a radical, but just like, oh, you have to work this weekend. I absolutely cannot. And if it costs you like a demotion in your rating, well, you go get another job, or you find another way to make money. You don't be proud. Well, I have to do it because then I'm not going to get my raise. I might get fired. That's what I mean by staying in your power. Understanding what you are and having that growth mindset and that powerful mindset that it's okay. I have my own power. I don't have to live in the fear of, oh, well, I'll starve on the street if I don't work this Saturday, that kind of thing.
Right. Beautiful, man. I love the word escapism and the context that you're using it, and also with growth mindset, because I have people that I've been mentoring or trying to coach, and their mindset is fixed. I can't tell you how many times I hear people say, this is the way my mind works. This is the way my brain works.
It's me. I can't help it. Exactly.
Yeah, it's just me. And that, to me, leads to a victimization almost,
right, exactly.
Where this person or these people exist at the whims of what's happening around them in the world, versus understanding their power, like you said, and then taking control and taking control of their life to move forward. Brother, we're at 40 something minutes here, and I try to keep this around 45 minutes.
Okay.
I want to wrap up with two things. The first thing is letting people know where they can contact you, people that resonate with your mindset and perhaps want to hear more about your coaching. Where can they? Yeah,
so there's two ways. I mean, you can send me an email. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, but my website is jgvoltcoaching.com. That's JG, my initials, John Grillo, JG Volt, as in a vault, like that you become an impenetrable force vault, right? And that, nobody can, get to you. And there's a vault that, you just become a powerful being, JG Volt, and Volt getting to the next level. My last name in Italian means grasshopper. So it's like vaulting to the next level. So jgvoltcoaching.com. You could set even a free consultation with me there, or send me an email at info@jgvoltcoaching.com. And, I'll be glad to answer any questions. I'd love to talk to you. And if you do set an appointment with me, I'll send you my free JG's 3x5 index cards of my mind, money, muscles tips. Okay. Tips and resources.
Beautiful. And then, John, if this were the last time that you and I spoke, or the first time and only time that someone in the audience may hear you speak, what is it that you would want us to walk away with?
Well, I hope it's not the last time me and you speak, obviously, but that's a great question. I love that question. I think I said it a little bit earlier, but there's more out there than we know. And we may not know the mysteries of life. Even when we die, we may not know them. But obviously, if we have faith, we expect to know them when we die, or know a little bit more when we die. But there's more out there than we know. And while we are figuring out the mysteries of life in the bigger picture, do everything you can to enjoy this life to the utmost. even when you're not. Even when you're not, like even when things are shitty, even when things are bad, find a way to enjoy something, whether it's a bite of a food or one of Derek's waffles or, like anything, just a walk outside, just find a way to enjoy, anything, a car ride, anything.
Beautiful, brother. John Grillo, I appreciate your time, man. Thank you for being with us.
Talk soon. Let's talk offline, and I love you, and thank you for asking me to do this.